Good morning, everybody. It's with real pleasure to discuss a tremendous app designed for friends that have trauma or PTSD, an acronym for post-traumatic stress disorder. And this particular one has been designed by the government. It's called PTSD Coach Australia. Of course, trauma is a significant mental health issue in society, in the community. And appears in multiple ways as a result of past traumatic experience. This app in particular is designed to help those friends that suffer from trauma symptoms to actually manage those symptoms of trauma, which tend to be quite debilitating and difficult to work with, particularly appearing in a hypervigilant type of mindset and particularly in the body. There's all kinds of traumas, particularly neglect-based trauma, which really is a result of being neglected or not growing up in a safe environment, right through to the presence of abuse-based trauma, which is more the presence of something really serious, like being abused or molested or beaten up, or perhaps men and women that go to war and experience some of the tragedies of that. So these types of overwhelmingly stressful experiences have a big impact on the mind and the body, and more so particularly in the body. So evidence has shown that trauma really affects brain structures in the limbic system, which sit beneath the thinking mind. So these things are much more difficult to control with thinking. So we have to really go into the body to really work out how to actually manage these symptoms of trauma. So for example, someone who's been traumatised usually has an enlarged amygdala. The amygdala is an almond-shaped structure in the brain sitting in the limbic system, which really operates probably like a smoke detector in a house. Its job is to really detect threat. And because someone has been traumatised and hasn't really resolved the trauma of their experience, their threat detector tends to be enlarged and what we would call maladaptive, meaning it tends to work when it doesn't need to, telling the body and the sympathetic nervous system that the person is under threat when they're not really under threat. So we end up with symptoms like rapid heart racing, a full sympathetic nervous system activation, symptoms of anxiety, depression, and all kinds of emotional instability. Hi everyone, so I'm Daniel Elrington. I work for Bridges as a senior AOD clinician, working with friends who suffer from addictive tendencies and behaviours, whether they're addicted to alcohol or drugs or gambling or anything else. So the PTSD Coach Australia app is very simple to use and very simple to download. Like any other app, we just look up into our app store, whether you've got an Android or an iPhone. There's applications for both. You download it, it's for free, which is terrific. Like any app, you just click on it and open it up. It's very user-friendly, so you have a section about learning about PTSD, you have a self-assessment section, you have the manage symptoms section, my favourite section, find support, which we've talked about before, setting up my network and finding professional care. So we can do an assessment, we can do a personal, confidential, private assessment, so it's all, no one else has to know if you're feeling a little uncomfortable about that. You can track your symptom history, so there's a tracking system, so you can use it on a daily basis if you really want, and you can record how you are, whether your symptoms are high or low. And then of course the management system, we've got the deep breathing, which is tremendous, the grounding and mindfulness exercises, changing perspective from a cognitive thinking point of view. Distracting yourself from intense emotions is a good way to get your mind off of the intense emotions. Help to fall asleep, which is a really wonderful support. See, people with trauma tend to have troubles falling asleep and staying asleep. So that's very helpful. There's some inspiring quotes, and of course the progressive muscle relaxation, which is really good in getting the attention and getting more body focused. Positive imagery, beach, country, forest, anything that you might enjoy from a nature point of view. Methods on how to reduce isolation. A lot of people with trauma tend to self-isolate or avoid situations that might be triggering for them. Support in that regard as well. The PTSD Coach Australia app is really more suited to adults and teenagers. For me, my most favourite section of the app is the management of the symptoms, and probably because I love doing those types of things, but all the education in the world on trauma, it's helpful, and it gives you awareness of maybe why things are happening, but that in itself won't resolve the trauma. Whereas you can actually just forget the whole trauma story and just manage the symptoms, and through that you can recover and heal. So this app is evidence-based. Of course, anything that's evidence-based requires the backing of science and requires the backing of thorough studies being done at university about the impacts of trauma and how to manage it and so forth. So everything on this app is included here because it has been demonstrated to be helpful in the support of trauma symptoms. So this has been studied, it's science-backed, and that's a really important thing to know, because there's plenty of therapies out there, and some of them might be helpful, but at least the ones here are evidence-based. So science has shown that when friends with trauma actually use these types of techniques in managing their symptoms, that actually it does help, it does work. It's efficacious in helping you resolve symptoms of trauma so that you'll be less hypervigilant, less anxious, less depressed. And that type of thing. The other really good thing about this app is that you can do assessments on a regular basis, and it records and reports for you. So you can keep a tally on how your symptoms are changing and evolving in more beautiful ways. So for friends who don't really want to talk about their past trauma or relive it, because the thought of that is like, wow, what do I want to do that for? I mean, that's just going to be re-traumatizing, and that's because it is, and it can be re-traumatizing. So the exciting thing about using the PTSD app is that you don't have to relive or tell your story to any therapist or anything like that. In the privacy of your own home and your own sense of comfort, you can just manage the symptoms and heal the body and heal the mind confidentially without having to retell the story. And that is a huge plus for a lot of people out there that don't want to have to relive a highly traumatic experience. It's really helpful to know that you're growing. If you're doing all of these therapies and interventions but nothing's changing, you're going to be wondering why you do it. You may as well just go down to the pub and have a beer. But if you actually can track what you're doing and you can notice positive change, it makes a big difference in your healing and your therapy, so that you're realizing that, I can grow despite the fact that this stuff happened. There is such a thing as post-traumatic growth. So we talk about post-traumatic stress, which exists, but there's also such a thing as post-traumatic growth. And that is also evidence-based. And, with a sense of courage and conviction, you can really work on the symptoms, really grow into a more happy, complete person. So some really good things about this app and recovering from trauma is that, firstly, you're not alone. There's plenty of people that are experiencing trauma or have in various ways. The second really important thing is that to have courage, to really have courage to face what's happening instead of running away from it or avoiding it. And the really exciting thing is that you can recover from trauma, you can manage the symptoms so that you can have a much more happy, abundant, pleasing life. It's exciting, and the evidence is showing it. You do these practices, you can reintegrate the brain so that you're more harmonious and peaceful. Good luck. So thanks everybody for watching. We really hope that you've learned something and that you've got some great takeaways to really help you with your life and to enrich and to create more abundance in your life. So if you'd like to discover more of this series and all kinds of mental health series that we're doing, please find Bridges on either Facebook, LinkedIn or YouTube. So Bridges Health and Community Care, rock on.